All right, so we're out here in the garage looking into our boost creeping problem. I pulled the wastegate out the other day, and I just took a little video of kind of holding that in my hands. Well, I did go ahead and try to put some air pressure to it using my hand pump, and it would not hold pressure at all. And so I'm like, okay. And it was rattling, too. You could hear something like rattling inside of it. So I said, okay, well, let's take it apart. So like that's what we got going on now. Like a what?
Rattlesnake. Like it's, and now it tastes like...
Yeah, just like that. So we don't want any rattlesnaking in our wastegate. So what we did is, I'll show you what we're doing right now. All right, so we got the top off of our wastegate, our spring, and our diaphragm and everything. And what I found rattling around in here, stop, dude, you're getting in the way. Was just these little threaded screws here. Had all three come out of here. There was no screws in here. So what this does is down there in this little hole, it grabs the stem of the wastegate valve. So the valve was just stuck closed. The diaphragm would compress the spring and everything would go up, but it wouldn't lift this because these things had come out. And they're a little tore up. They're not too bad though. Honestly, that's probably just how they come. You know, it's a super cheap wastegate. And you know, honestly, this is really the first issue we've had out of our extremely cheap parts list. And this isn't even an old part. This is a brand new part that I just put on a couple weeks ago. So probably go ahead and message the seller, see maybe I can get another one coming. But in the meantime, I'll probably just go ahead and put some Loctite on these little heads here. Make sure they'll grab onto this. The stem is in good shape. It's not like rounded off or busted up at all. So we'll go ahead and just put it back together so we can have the car drivable again. Next thing I'm gonna do is we went ahead and pulled the spark plugs out just to take a closer look at the inside of the engine, see if we had any potential damage from going real lean. And I'm gonna go ahead and do a compression test, just kind of get a scope of the condition of the engine. I've never done a compression test on this engine since we put it together. So I don't really know what to expect. I hope they're all pretty equal, but I don't know that it's gonna be very high. You know, we are using a 2mm head gasket, and I think it's a relatively low compression engine. But these are just, so these are some coil packs that my buddy from Instagram made for me, threw together for me to use on the car. I just haven't come around to installing them yet. I was kind of test fitting them so we could go individual coil on plug in the not too distant future, kind of clean things up a little bit. But those aren't going on right away. We're still going to stick with our waste spark for the time being while we hammer out these other issues. But me and my man Dub here are going to go ahead and run some compression tests on this thing and kind of see how the engine's doing. Great work, dude. A little under 130. And 130 again. Last hole. Nice. So I took my old wastegate, also an eBay part, and I stole the little lock screws out of there, and I put them in here. They're much longer, and a whole bunch of red Loctite, hold everything still. So they're longer, they're tighter, they're Loctited. So that should be good for that. I think we're gonna send this again and see what happens. Boost cut kept us safe. It'll do it again if it needs to, but we should be good with this. So the next order of business is, this is the spring that was in it, and I guess that's about a 15-pound spring. We were running probably around 12 or 13 PSI with just the spring, with just wastegate, no boost control at all. This is presumably a 10-pound spring that was in this wastegate, the old one, and this is a 5-gate spring that was also in the old one at one point, like that. But I think I'm going to take our 15-pound spring and add it to this 5-pound spring for 20 pounds of pressure, which would probably look more like 16 or 18 PSI. Just on wastegate, and that's a pretty happy spot for this car. I mean, that car's going to run good at about that PSI just for the streets and stuff, and then I can use my Grimspeed controller to just add a little bit of boost instead of counting on that pressure regulator to add 10 pounds. So I'll just stick right there. That'll stick right there, and this bad boy will go right there. All right, got the wastegate back together. Dump pipe is loosely installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the car back together, get the plugs and everything back in it. Our compression readings were fine. The lowest I saw was a little under 130. The highest I saw was a little under 140. A little bigger gap than I'd expect to see, really, but as long as all cylinders are within about 10% of each other, then everything's generally okay. You don't have anything that's extremely low. Honestly, I'm a little surprised to see anything in the 140s on this engine as loose as we gapped these rings, but actually everything looks pretty good. So I guess that homemade valve lapping job and gapped rings on a bench grinder all worked out pretty good. But I'm gonna go ahead and get it back together, and we'll take it for a drive tomorrow probably and just see how she feels. So another day has passed and a few more developments on the car. I was able to, I had this little spot in the timing belt where something like wedged into the belt, and I was able to extract it. You see that little speck right there? There was a little something hard like embedded in the belt that I was able to pick out. I already lost it, I think. It's kind of odd looking, hard to identify. But also how I identified that we had a bad battery. Battery was not starting the car. I hooked up a charger to it overnight. This morning it was sizzling and spewing out of everywhere. Unplugged it, already down to 10 volts, so clearly it has like a dead cell. So I gotta get a battery for the car. Also, notice we're low on brake fluid. It's like right at the minimum mark. Gotta give this thing a good look over to make sure the brake system's operating normally, not leaking anywhere. That's a little alarming. Me and Matt redid all these brake lines ourselves whenever we deleted the ABS module. So definitely got to look over all our unions and stuff there. The transmission pan was missing 2 bolts. Don't know where they went. I guess they weren't ever torqued properly. 2 bolts missing out of there. And finally, gonna go ahead and do an oil change while we have the car here where it is. I'm gonna go ahead and order a bigger fuel pump. We can get a 535 liters per hour pump. That's like the same size as the 450 we have in it right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and order it. It's 130 bucks from Summit. It'll probably be here tomorrow or the next day. Throw it in there, and then we'll keep that 450 pump for if we need to go dual pump, stage pumps type of deal. But I think the 535 pump is gonna carry us well into where we wanna be power level on this current engine setup. So won't have to do a whole lot of modification there. Just drop the puppy in there where the 450 is now, and everything should be good there. So just gonna keep kind of giving you guys updates as the week progresses and parts show up. But we'll have some more news for you as soon as we get the car just one step further. But I did get the spark plugs in, got it started up, made sure it was running good. Everything looks good there. Okay, so we got the oil change on the Lexus. I took the filter to work today. We have a filter cutter at work, so I opened it up. Everything looked perfect. So with the compression tests, inspecting the oil filter and the oil, everything looks to be in good, healthy order with the 2JZ. So we're good there. I got the plugs back in, got the car running, everything felt good. Well, today what I'm taking care of is upgrading our fuel pump to the 535 liter per hour pump from Walbro. So this is definitely a step up from what we have. The good thing is it's really the same package as the 450 Walbro that we've been running. We pretty much ran out of this pump immediately. This 450 I'm taking out is not very old at all. It's only been in here since right before IFO a couple months ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and just hold on to that in case we end up going with a dual stage pump setup, which at some point we will, probably sooner than later, depending on how the new one acts. But I'm gonna just kind of make a quick video of the tear down of the hanger assembly, because this is a real common upgrade that a lot of people are gonna need to do who are making more power or trying to make more power with their is300 if they're going turbo. So I've already modified the shit out of this pump hanger, so it's not gonna be a from start, but I'll kind of describe what I did to make this pump fit in the stock hanger. So everything's copacetic, everything still fits together. And we'll just kind of go from there. I'll try to explain things I had to do previously to make the last Walbro pump work, just so you guys who are working with a totally stock pump can kind of see what the process looks like. Okay, so I've already got the pump halves apart. So I'm gonna show you our new pump here. This is you can see the number, it's got a long number that starts with an F and the last 3 digits are 295. So that is the designation of that pump. This is the one we're taking out, the 450, and the last 3 numbers of it are 267. So you can see they have pretty much the exact same footprint. They have the same size barb coming out of the top. What I had to do to make the 450 work is I had to cut the wires coming off it and put blade terminals. I always do 1 male and 1 female. And then on the wires coming down from the pump hat, you just do the same thing. Snip those and put male and female as needed. I like to do the male and female on one side and then on the other so you can't mix them up if you take it apart later. So pretty simple stuff there. What I had to do to run my return style system is you'll see this brass port right here. Okay, so this is a 5/16 nipple. I had to drill a hole. There's plenty of real estate on the bottom to put the hole right there. So you can see I put it just right next to the delivery hole. Okay, I got a little O-ring underneath it because it did leak a little bit the first time I tried this. But with a little bit of MacGyver, I mean, it's kind of, I had to like kind of figure out all the adapters. I wish I could remember the part numbers and stuff that I had to use. I really did have to get kind of crafty in order to get this fitting on the bottom and this fitting to just cinch up. You could probably find like a bulkhead style adapter. If you like explored AN fittings, and I bet you'd find something that fit really well. What I did is just kind of MacGyvered something out of what's at the parts store. So then I have this hose coming off of it, and this is for the return system, but also this is going to attach to the transfer pump in the tank so that fuel transfers from the right side to the left side where the pump is. And I can show you more on that whenever we go to install this back into the car. But really didn't have to modify all that much here. So we got our blade terminals and stuff. So one of the cool things about using the wall row pump is actually the port on the outside of it is not a lot different than the pump that comes out of this. So in the stock settings, you'll have your pump slid into here, and you'll see that barb will go into a hole right there, like that. So it goes into that hole, into the body, and then the fuel comes through here, and then it comes out here where it meshes up with this little O-ring port here. So it's kind of, honestly, it's kind of shitty the way that this is for modification, because the fuel line is like recessed down into the top of the hat here. So it's really hard to just change that to a larger size or whatever. So this is the way I did it. So this pump basically slides into the existing housing, but there is some differences that we have to figure out. So on the barb, on this one, you'll see it's just like kind of like it's got the Christmas tree teeth or whatever, the hose barb, so it grabs the hose. Well, the one you take out, the stock one, is not going to have these teeth. It's just smooth. And what it will have is these two pieces here, this little sleeved piece, and then this O-ring. And we're going to use these the same way that they're used on the stock one. We're going to slide this piece over. It's a tight fit. I have a slit or a crack in mine. I don't know if that was there from factory. Like, I don't know if this came that way, but you can see that little slit. It's needed to get it to slide over the barb of this. So if it's not there, I just can't remember. I think I had to crack that or slit it myself, but that lets it spread a little bit, and you're going to want to do that. And then we're going to be reusing the same O-ring off of the stock one. When you pull the old pump off, it's going to have these on it. It's going to have that there and this there. So you need to get them off. We're going to have to use them on the new stuff. So we covered the electrical wiring. We covered these things. Reusing this seal is going to allow you to fit the pump the same way that it did. So just real quick, I've already kind of touched on this on other videos, but just to kind of just reiterate this real quick. So this is our fuel pressure regulator, the stock one that comes in the car. I have a pop rivet in this hole, in this port. I did 2-part epoxy the first time. It started to come apart. It didn't hold up to the test of time, but we have to plug this hole because this is your fuel pressure regulator, and we're no longer regulating fuel pressure in the tank. So if you wanted to continue to regulate in the tank, that's fine. If you want to keep it a returnless system, it's not as good for boosted applications, but you could still do the fuel pump upgrade and run a normal returnless style system. It wouldn't matter. But what you need to know is if you are going return style, you have to have this hose for the return, and you have to have this regulator plugged. But you have to still use the regulator because it plugs off a port. That's going to be a problem if you don't. So we don't want it relieving pressure in the tank. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to snip these wires, put on some new blade terminals so we can hook it up electronically, and then I will go ahead and start building this. But real quick, I'll just show you how this works. So we're going to just slip this black piece on, just like that. And then the O-ring is going to jump in that little first groove right above it. And that's all we got to do there. That will fit in the hole. We'll help encourage it with a little bit of lubricant, but that's going to fit in no problem. Now let me get these wires sorted, and we'll get this thing installed. So now that we have our wiring sorted, we're going to spray a little bit of lubricant on this top O-ring. It's going to need it. It's going to be a snug fit. And then we're going to spray a little bit more into the little hole. And here, we're going to run our wires through the top, like that. Line up our port. Feed it in, just like that. Got the pump in. We need our fuel pressure regulator. This is very important that we put this in here. But in order to make room for this, now you can't tell now because I've already done it, But this goes right there. And then all I have left to retain it is this. And I just kind of hook it right there because pressure is going to be acting on this. So it might pop out the bottom. So I've retained use of this, but with the addition of some zip ties strategically placed. See if I can duplicate how that was. And that'll just keep that damn thing from popping out, hopefully. That's the plan anyway. Also, we'll have this, and it'll be, pushed down at the bottom of the tank or whatever. So we're gonna push on our screen. We got a little metal thing, a little metal guy that goes on there, and all you gotta do is just kind of push that down, engage its teeth and the little nub here. I don't think these things ever really just fall off, but we're gonna just take the precaution because we can. Okay, so we got electrical. I'm gonna plug these two together. All right, now we've got electrical continuity. And now the last thing we gotta do is let's go ahead and lube up this seal here. Anything that we can lube, we will. We're going to need to pull our wires back through here. So we don't need them, we don't need all that slack. All right, our hose is gonna go through this hole, which was already there. I didn't have to make that hole. Okay, pull through all our extra wiring so it's not getting in the way. And then all this stuff just kind of clicks together in a happy little way like that. Just like that. So we've got our regulator in place, which I'd really like to get this zip tie around this thing, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. I'm not sure, but I can't pull that out if I try to. Maybe you can find a better way to do it. I hope you do. This is kind of thrown together, but the important thing is now we can reinstall this into the car, have a much bigger fuel pump, whether it be a 450 here, which was more than sufficient for, this fuel pump got us going about 20 PSI with E85 before it was just tapped out, before we were like over 100% duty at times. So this pump hopefully will get us, closer to 25, maybe further. But this 450 is a pretty stout pump. If you're running pump gas, this thing will take you well over 20 PSI. But if you're running boost like that on pump gas, you definitely want to be careful for more reasons than one. But that's basically how this comes together. Now, the only other thing that I need to show you that's important for the return style system is in the car. So let's go to the car real quick and I'll kind of show you what we need to do there. Okay, so the last thing you need to know here is about this guy here. And you might recognize this if you took apart your stock pump, because this is normally attached to this. Okay, but you got to take it off. The way I did that is, so this hose here goes over to the other side of the tank. We need it for fuel transfer, so we leave that alone. It goes on the same port that it normally does. But what you'll see when you take this all apart is that normally this has a hose or a pipe that goes to this black hose, and that allows fuel transfer. So we need this pump for fuel transfer. Otherwise, you're going to use up all the gas on this side, have a bunch of gas still over there, and you're going to end up stalled out on the road even though you got half a tank of gas. So that's what this hose comes in for. So this hose just slides, I just slide it over the black portion here. It doesn't have to be super snug. It doesn't see a lot of pressure. Really, it just sees flow. So you don't have to worry about cinching it down or any kind of crazy means. I just slide my 1/4-inch hose over this little cut section of this black plastic, and that's plenty for fuel transfer. And we've ran this thing totally out of gas, like used all the gas and still been able to drive to the gas station with the needle on E. So this is a tried and true method, and this is what you got to do to get it all working. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the pump back in the car, bolt everything back up, and then we're gonna be good to go. And this thing's gonna be ready for some testing this weekend.